Hey guys, this is Canyon. Today I thought it would be fun to do a video about how I do my creative writing process, how I get from just having a character and a painting of a character that I thought up to kind of pushing that a little further to including that into stories that I already have, or to removing characters, or to just getting from just having a ton of artwork of that specific character to pushing it a little further to where you know about that character, where you understand how that character is thinking, where you have actual plot associated with that character, where they make decisions, and you can kind of understand, hey, that character is like a person, but in just in an imaginary world, but on paper, and not just like just a sheet with a bunch of character traits next to it, like spunky, creative, loves to golf, or stuff like that, because it's really easy to make those things. It's difficult, or it's not necessarily difficult per se, but it is it's a little trickier to push that a little further and actually make a story. A lot of people that I speak to all have the same problem, including myself, where for just years on end you would just fill your world with all kinds of details and characters, but there would be no actual story. There'd be nothing that anyone could actually read that would make any kind of cohesive sense or really be that interesting. And it's just like having a map where you write a big map and you have all these cities and interesting points and places, and you say to people, hey, this is supposed to be really interesting, you guys are going to love it, but all they see is that there's just a map, and everyone draws maps too, so how is yours any different than anyone else's? So that's what I like to speak about today, just a little bit, is how I start from, or how I started to how I got to where I am, which is having actual stories for characters, having things that people can go and read, and working on a bigger overarching story that's actually tying everything together, and actually working on it, and not just saying, hey, it's gonna get done one day, but actually putting a I don't know what a good saying would be, but actually just doing it. So the way that I started all of my writing, I worked at a moving company, and I would be out there for between like 10 to 16 hours a day, just moving people's couches and bookshelves and all that nonsense. And it was like, when you have a limited playlist such as myself, where you don't listen to a lot of music, you just listen to the same, like, 5 albums, or different 150 songs maybe, you run through them really quick and they start to get pretty boring. But that's just the way I am. I like familiar, regular things. But so I started to think about a story, like, hey, maybe it'd be fun for me to just try to think up something. And so I started, when I would get home, I would draw like a little character. And the first character, maybe I'll put it up on the screen, the first character that I ever thought of, her name was Adara. I have since kind of shelved that character, but I built this whole world that I'm currently working on and actually writing out around her and what was happening to her. And I started just with a character. I started with a concept, where you would have interesting colored eyes on people. And I was like, well, how would that maybe tie in? Because I was just like, I like to draw characters with pretty eyes. Maybe I could make that an interesting point in my work that I'm putting together in my world. So you have to. And so I would spend just hours and hours trying to think of little things that I could add, and little characters, and oh, this is the group of people that's kind of bad, and this is the group of people that's kind of good, and but the bad guy, and here's the good guy, and the main character's got this love interest, and then they die, and I started to just have this a tiny little view of my world. And I, for years, would just kind of focus on that key theme. I would think about all the scenes as they were happening, but I could never put it out. And I would try to draw them, and I would have my little drawings of all the characters, but there was just nothing ever written. It was all just stuck in my head. And when you work like that, unless you've just got like a superior memory, it's really easy to forget things. it's easy to just sit down and be like, oh dang, I thought of a cool character, or I thought of how to resolve this issue, or this plot hole, or this conundrum where these two details can't really coexist for a good story to happen, and you think of a good solution for that, and you just forget it. Even though it was, you think it was such a great idea, and oh, I'll never forget it, or oh, I don't need to write it down. I don't need to borrow paper or anything, or I just can't be bothered to get up from my chair. It's always worth it to just go and write it down. I can't stress that enough, because for years I just didn't write anything. I would only use my drawings to keep track of details and things, and for years I had no idea what was going on. It just all became so convoluted. It's like, hey, how can this actually fit together? And maybe about a year and a half ago, I decided, hey, all right, I'm gonna sit down with all of my artwork and all of my ideas, and I'm going to actually write them all down. And this was very important because it felt like a big stepping stone. It's like, when you're sitting on the couch all day and you're like, oh God, I gotta actually go do the dishes. Once you get up and you actually start doing the dishes, you're like, okay, this feels really good to get something done. And you're like, maybe I should just go fold the laundry too while I'm at it. And then why don't I just clean the sinks? And why don't I gotta take the trash out. Things start really, really rolling, where you just felt so stuck on the couch previously. You start to move. Once you start doing something, you usually continue doing something. Once you get on a roll, it's hard to stop. You find yourself like up at 3 a.m. and you're like, oh God dang it, I have to go to sleep now. I've got work in the morning, but I want to keep drawing, or I want to keep writing, because it's all coming to me. So it's for me. I get really creative when it's late at night, so it's fine for me. But it's also good to be productive during the day. Just start doing something, get something out of the way, including drawing. If you want to sit down, you're like, oh, God, I have nothing to do, or I have no ideas right now. Just draw a circle, draw something that you can be proud of, and get your hands moving and working on something. You will be proud of it. But so it took me a long time to actually just sit down and commit to writing. I was like, oh my God, where do I start? And so I started to write, and I had already come up with all kinds of details about my world, and I even drew a map like I complained about earlier. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna put all these things that I had done right here on the table, and I'm just gonna sort through all of them. And what I found was the most efficient method for me was I would take an index card. You can get them really cheap, dollar store. I got these ones from a dollar store. They're fine quality, just these little blank things. And the benefit of using this as opposed to something like a notebook to keeping all of your ideas is that a lot of people fear using notebooks, or sorry about that. The video, I ran out of storage. Anyways, so a lot of people really fear getting disorganized in their notebooks, and they'll be like, they just don't want so many details all around. And I am the same way with my sketchbooks. I like neatness in my sketchbooks. My sketchbooks could just be considered, finished works books, because I don't sketch in them. It's the same reason I sketch on blank paper. I do the majority of my drawing on printer paper, because I have mindsets that I just, for some reason, can't get past, that, I don't want to waste something. But when I put something onto just something small and expendable, I want to, I still want to use it effectively, but I don't fear failure as much, and it's easier for me to draw like that. But so I use these to keep track of all of my preliminary story ideas. So I would, for my whole story, start to finish, all the characters that I had thought of, I would very simply write their name. I will pan up here. Right here, I keep track of all of the severely relevant characters. We have Samonth, Pelagia, Ririn, Absinthe, Belial. Those are some of the more important ones. There are several more, but those are the ones that I've been thinking on recently. Right, coming back down. There we go. I would write their names right here, and just to simply have their name on something. Okay, step one, I have written something. And every little detail that would come to my mind about this story, perennials are a type of being in my story, and all I wrote down, all perennials are blind, question mark, and that is just a little idea. Gamaliel is the exception, and that is just another idea. Circle it if I had a question about it, or if that's something I need to revisit, and then I would put it over in the consider it pile. I would have a couple different piles going. Some of them would be just relevant to certain plot lines. The other ones would be just relevant to this. Is this something that we're going with or not? And then there was just a discard pile, something that I will keep them to look through them to see where I came from for the story, or to look back on to see if I could kind of recycle that idea. Murant, another character of mine. I would draw little scenes, little ideas. Myriad, he's the same type of being as Murant is. Write little flavor texts. Let me see, the choir all wield ceremonial swords. So I was thinking about, there's a character, her name is Myriad. She belongs to a secret choir within this thing called the Church of Eliel. And this secret choir, do they all wield ceremonial swords? Very simple, basic question, pretty much just a design question, but that would still go in the consideration pile because I haven't ruled it out, but I haven't become definitive on it. Menzia, one of the antagonists of this story, Levandria, another antagonist. But just starting to get myself familiar so I can just sort through. And then as the pile starts to grow, and I would read, and yeah, Pelagia is the first few of the absolved, asked Eliel's forgiveness, and he would remake her, blah, 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 blah. And I would just start to build this big pile. Culture. People use wax stamp designs in their hair. Build up this big pile. Once I run out of everything, and I can't think of any new ideas, I sort through the pile again. I try to make some decisions. Then I would I would just go through, I'd pick one. Okay, people use wax stamps in their hair. We're gonna solidify that. Boom, and I would take out another index card. I would take out my pen, and I would just be like, only the women use wax stamp designs in their hair. And so, all right, we have changed it. We have solidified it. Like, okay, I think I'm gonna fully implement that into the story, and I'd stick it over here like in the Dunzos part. Like, okay, that's what we've got. That's what we can work on. Because I had started and everything, all of my ideas were in my head. I came up with, and this whole box over here is just filled with index cards. And these all came out of there, but I just put down absolutely every single one of my ideas that I had, and I just kept trying to add through it. I ran through so many index cards. I threw away so many index cards as well, just filled with just ideas that I thought were trash. I was surprised at how many of my original story ideas that I had just been thinking about for years and years, I just threw away. I was like, this is just not good. It's either too tropey, real campy, just downright cheesy, and when you're younger, you think of all those very generic ideas. You think it's the coolest thing. You've got the chosen one, and then sometimes you just, your taste changes, and then you go through and you change all of that. But so yeah, I solidify all my ideas, and once I got through the entire stack, everything, and sometimes you come across one that is like two very important characters have two very important things to do, but they conflict with each other, or it's just one of these is better than the other one. We don't need both. Then it would take me sometimes like an hour to just sit there and think and try to write as many index cards as I could of ideas of how we could circumvent that problem, or how we could rewire the story to fit them both in, or maybe we don't need either of them. Maybe I'll just scrap both characters and make a new one that fulfills both of those roles. That actually happened. I had a character, her name is Absinthe, and then I had a character that I spoke to you about earlier. Her name is Adara, and I had another character whose name was Myriad. I realized that even though Adara was literally the first character that I had ever come up with in the story, she was completely unnecessary, and that her plot points could be better fulfilled by Myriad and Absinthe, that I could divide her character and fulfill it and just simplify. I didn't need her. unfortunately, she had to go. You know, she'll live on in my memory. Maybe I'll make another side character or something, but sometimes it's best to just get rid of something. You don't need every single idea, or sometimes that idea may be best implemented later down the line. So after you get all of this, after you write all of this out, everything works. There's no conflict of interest. There's no crossroads that is just impassable. There's nothing that the reader would hate. You just start to get into a book or sheets of paper, and you just start writing. You just start writing, whether it's good or bad. And you just keep going. You break it up into little paragraphs. Get do as much as you can. Things that either are going to be, well, things that are bad, you just cross out. Things that you don't know are sure or certain, or hey, maybe I want to change this, or I don't know if that's a good idea or not, I would write squares around them so I could immediately notice them, and I could reread it, come back later, and we'll do another draft. Of course, let me see if I have any examples here. Like this one right here, you just put in a blank. You know, it's like I don't even know what I want there, but I want to fill it in with something. So that was a very early draft of the story of two characters. That was of myriad and her father Urian. But so we'll move all of the index cards for now. Put all of these aside. Because after that, then I went to other drafts. I would type it out on the computer. Let me readjust. I typed some stuff out on the computer, just hammered it out in like a notepad. But I found that I work better with paper and pen, and it's just much more tactile. It's better for me to just feel it and see it, and smell the ink, all of that. Spaced again, but sorry about that. Anyways, I like to work on pen and paper more, so I stopped typing things out on the computer. Everything that I do now for that's story related, it's here. And also, I forgot to mention that a lot of the stuff that I had initially done before I had even written anything on these note cards, and I had kept mostly everything in my head, but with my paintings and stuff, I would occasionally just do little paragraphs or blurbs of or little poems or stories, just very, very short things. I would post them onto my Instagram alongside my artwork. So that was like the only stuff that I had. I didn't copy it, didn't save it, didn't go anywhere, but it was all still there. It is all still there, but that was the only way that it was recorded or kept. I would just think of it and type it straight into Instagram comments, So anyways, getting back to this, I would just start at the very beginning. Whether or not this is how the story is going to go, I would start on the timeline from the very beginning and just work all the way through every single thing that happens with each of the characters as it would happen to them in the story. Now, whether or not it's going to be like, oh, okay, we're going to show the middle, and then we'll go back to a flashback of the beginning, and then we'll go even further, and then there's a big time skip, and then you go back and see what happened previously. Whether or not that's how you're going to structure it, for me, it's best to keep it all just very consistent. And I don't know if there are good writing techniques for that, or whether or not there's some easier way to do it, but for me, I would just write out little details about all the characters, blah, blah, blah. Eliel created a son, blah. Aegith became angry. The ages passed throughout the ages. And this isn't right here. It's not a story. It's not like written. Someone couldn't read through this and really understand what's happening. But these are all details that I would understand, that I could piece together. And you just go all the way through up until you're like, okay, I don't have any more yet, but I need to get it organized. So you get to a certain point. You read this, you reread this, you cross things out, you circles little checks, and each of the checks was like, okay, that's good, we're gonna run with that. This is the finished version until I redo it. And so I would work with this, I'd get it all together, and then after this, this one took me quite a while to finish, and that's not even showing you guys. I have I have folders filled with information about the story, but this is the cohesive stuff, not drafts and scribbles. And then this is the current best version of the story that is out there, and it's all just details. It's not fully written out, but you could follow along with what's happening with the characters. It is clear enough to where you have all the detail you need, but none of the fluff. You know, it's some of it I went a little further for my own sake, so I could keep track of as many details as I had thought of then as possible. The story about Myriad and her father, I have pretty much fully written through. I'm going to rewrite it probably another 2 or 3 more times before I would ever post it anywhere or release it in any kind of finished format. But yeah, I would just, and I took this and I completely just rewrote it, and I changed so much. You would be surprised with how much, you know, you would go through and just completely change, and just be like, wow, I thought that was a great idea, but it actually sucks, or maybe it doesn't work as well as I thought it would, or maybe you like, I think that a story that I thought was going to happen here down the line may be better to happen here, in kind of in the middle, but you don't know what's going on, and maybe you are kind of drawn back to that story later on, just saying, hey, this is what actually happened in between. Here's how you know. And I think that those kinds of stories are interesting, one where you kind of go back and forth and understand, because it's fun to piece things together and understand, and then see what happens in the background. But this is how I, you know, got all the way through to these finished products. Well, not finished products, but comparing having all of this written down, and these are details, decisions, consequences, you know, plots, all kinds of different things about the characters, and not about the world. This is not like not a dictionary, but this is not like an encyclopedia of the world. These are the plot points and choices that the characters all make to get through the story. And so this is the beginning to probably middle of the finished, you know, the finished product, and it works. It works really well for me. This system, from going from just having an idea to putting it onto some index cards, not caring about, you know, you know, messing things up or writing something bad or ruining a nice notebook or anything like that, but just throwing out all of your ideas, putting them there, organizing them, rewriting them, creating a bunch of piles, taking those good piles and then just organizing them chronologically, and then simply writing them down, and then rewriting them with a little bit more flavor text, and then rewrite that but longer, and then rewrite that, until you get something that looks good, and you get something. And with this, let me take the clip off of here. This one has so many like, you know, redactions and omissions, and let me get to you know, all these changes that I made and things that I still need to go through and, you know, completely removed a section. And I thought that this was completely done. And I was like, oh, that looks great, you know. And then adding new points and writing on the tops and writing on the bottoms and completely axing a whole section, you know, going through. And it is a lot of fun to do it. It's a lot of tedious work, but once you get from the start to the end, and you know, you look at it from where you are now compared to where you were, it's really satisfying. It really is. And you know, I don't just write, but I paint you know, illustrations for all the stories, all the characters, and I'll make another video going through and detailing all of the characters. And it's not going to tell you the whole story, but it's kind of like you know, like if you watch those little infographic videos about, oh, the characters of Dark Souls, who are they and what are they doing? It tells you about the characters. Sometimes it doesn't go through the full details of the story, or, you know, it doesn't tell you about the full Dark Souls story. It just tells you about them, not necessarily sometimes how it plays out through the whole narrative. But so I think I'll make some videos like that. But yeah, I hope that I was clear. I know that I wasn't, but I hope that I was. With, you know, my ideas and stuff. But this is just my really convoluted way and very messy way of how I, you know, organize my thoughts from just complete nonsense and no rhyme or reason, and only paintings and OCs and details about their personalities, from taking it from that, writing it down, getting it organized, and then actually having something that you can look at, something that you can read on paper, that you can then take and use as a guide for your story. When you're thinking about it, when you're thinking about new details, thinking, wait a minute, let me go read this and see where here it can fit in. Or, hey, maybe I can just create something completely new for that. But it's really good to have something completely finished, and it really is a milestone, and it feels good to me to be this far along in the writing process. I still have so much work to do. I'm consistently trying to update my website and my Patreon and for relevant information, but I don't want to reveal too much of the story, because there's a lot that happens to these characters that I don't want you to know until I put out I put out the final product and I reveal that to everybody. So yeah, but thank you guys for watching. I hope that you enjoyed it or got any whatever enjoyment you can out of it. But yeah, go check out, if you haven't seen it, my Instagram. I'll post a link to that in the I don't know, the about section. I've never done that before, but and also go check out my website and my Patreon. And yeah, if you like what you see, then it would be great if you would subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think would be fun to hear about, or fun for me to talk about. I would like to do more videos just about things that I enjoy, all the series that I like, but this was a personal one about my current work. I do want to go through, my favorite artists, or my favorite art books, or my favorite paintings, or reviewing manga series or anime, or all kinds of stuff. But the things that I truly love and really enjoy and want to share with people, and somehow connect it to my own artwork as well. Like, hey, why do I need to hear, or why you need to hear about this from me? Maybe I'll just give you my own personal take on it, or why it works into my work, or how I'm inspired by those things. So again, thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and have a good day.